can figure it. Okay, it's recording. Let's see. First question.
Wait, one sec. My computer's broke. Ooh,
Oh, you're good.
we're good again.
Okay. So first question. Under what conditions does James argue that is acceptable for the positional nature to help us determine what to believe?
Okay, well, in his paper, I thought he was pretty direct about like laying these rules out. Seemed like he had like a confirmed way to always know. And, like the overarching idea that I thought it was basically that it was like a forced option. So you were put into a situation where you had to make like an immediate choice that you didn't kind of have like a way to get around the answer. So it was something that was 100% question that you had to answer. You were in a situation where you had to answer it right then and there wasn't just like an easy out. And these were like the constitutions in a sense, in order to use the passional nature in order to determine what we think of them. It's kind of what I took from it. I don't know. It's a little hard for me, but I like you like laid out pretty direct ideas.
Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing. Like with the forced choices, I think he mentioned like religion as an example, like where or just some other things too, where you kind of have to make a decision in the moment. Like it's you have to you can't really suspend judgment, I think is what he said. Like you there's some decisions where you have to. I don't know, I mean, it's kind of in the name, but you have to make that choice, and um, but yeah, you got to at some point you got to choose whether or not am I going to believe this or am I not going to. So,
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you have to like pick a stance.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a
Yeah.
certain comes to that. I think is what he said.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the way he says that, like you were saying, our passional nature, it can only affect our decision making under like certain conditions and just certain events, and then um if, like you guys were saying, yeah, if for a forced decision you are must choose something, and even not deciding anything in its own is still making a decision. So that's kind of what I took for it from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like he expanded a little bit onto that too, and the idea that there's kind of the sense of it's sort of when you only have that option in that moment, and you have to make a choice, and you have to go through with it. Then and there's no way to get around it. It's kind of the only reason that he felt like you should ever use your passion.
And also, like you were saying, how like there is certain cases where our emotions and our personal ideas can help us make that decision. Like you were saying for religion, you can't really like prove anything. You can't really give like a logical explanation as to why you're making that decision. And that is like a good example of when you can let your um passional nature, as he calls it, then help us make like a final decision.
Yeah, like I think he was saying like the I remember reading about something that if it actually is helpful to us as a person, like it benefits us to believe that thing, we can resort to our passional nature, like you said, and believe it based on what how it really fits or helps us as a person. You know, like
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like if it's of value to somebody and you're
Hmm.
kind of torn, you just go back to that.
Yeah, yeah. And like you were saying too, actually, the evidence isn't always going to be like I don't. There's probably not going to be like just complete evidence that it's one way or another. You know, like there's always going to be some questions in the air of either side. You know, so eventually, I think that's what you're saying too. Eventually, you're gonna have to choose and kind of like make a jump to whether or not like you got to believe something eventually. You know, you got to make a jump with what you believe, or not a jump, but like I don't know,
Like a leap of faith, kind of.
something like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Correct answer to what it is you're trying to figure out. So unless you just have to trust that your intuition and your gut, that within yourself, you're doing it out of the correct
Mhm.
Yeah.
wants, and that you just know that you're doing it for the right reasons. Having faith in a sense.
You guys want to move on to the second one?
Sure. Yeah.
So what is Plato's allegory of the cave meant to convey about the difference between appearance and reality? What role does education play in helping us identify the difference between these two? I thought kind of like the basic of the cave was just showing the difference between appearance and what you see and then reality. You know, like there was the prisoners and they just accepted what they were seeing as the truth. But then in like a more complex way, there was a whole world outside of their cave, and I think the way you can say education plays a big part in this like metaphor is the way that education is a way to then get us out of the cave, like a way to fight ignorance, I guess.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like knowledge is the only way that we can, you know, we can make questions and look for something further than just what we see on our day-to-day life. And it leads us to then make that transformation of, as he says, like get out of the cave. And yeah, just kind of it's a way to then pursue a higher level of truth and knowledge.
What was what was the first part of the question again? I didn't hear it
Um,
completely.
what is Plato's allegory of the cave meant to convey about the difference between appearance and reality?
Okay, yeah. I you kind of explained it really well, but one thing that I also thought was interesting too was how he explained how like when he said the person would come out like was unchained and came out of the cave and was shown that like the figures that made the shadows on the wall. And he explained that like is it not logical for them to believe that the and eventually he goes out to the outside world and sees the world, right? Is it more is it not logical for him to believe that what he's seen his entire life, the shadows are more real than any of the other things that they're showing at first, you know, which I thought was really interesting. Like the way that because appearances have been the only like because appearances were the only thing that he knew, that seemed more real to him than the actual things themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. Because basically, we're all kind of born into that, and the only way to get out of the cave is through education.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, without it, it's hard to, like you were saying, it's hard to know what's real and what's not. If you've lived your entire life believing one thing, and it's hard to then come out of it once you are exposed to something else because you're so used to what you have seen your entire life. So yeah, once you are actually, like they said, once the prisoners actually did get out of the cave, how do they know which one was real and which one wasn't?
Mhm.
Having the ability to trust like the new light, or as he was saying, like the real world, like going and exploring and seeing that there's so much more than just the shadows that they were seeing on the walls. And they kind of at first not trusting that that's okay in a sense, and always wanting to go back to the comfort of what they knew and what they were comfortable in. It's interesting contradicting how the appearance of the walls, the shadows on the walls made them more comfortable to them. The reality of the whole entire world is kind of a huge contradiction. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's to me the thing that the role that education plays is kind of like, in a sense, like it's like the walk from looking at the shadows to looking at the whole world. And it's kind of like that whole path of going through that walk or path and getting more comfortable in reality.
It's a way to just question our reality and yeah, just like understand if what we've seen and what we know is really all there is.
Yeah, because it could be kind of uncomfortable to like relearn everything and have to leave, you know?
Yeah. You guys want to add anything else, or you want to go to the next question?
Another thing that was interesting was how I thought it was interesting how when he actually came back to the cave and he explained to them, this isn't like, or no, he wasn't able to see or to identify exactly what the shadows were. He was kind of ridiculed because apparently they said his eyesight had gotten worse from going outside. You should never have done that. This is what's real. You know, this is this shape or whatever. I don't know, but like it was interesting like how we went back. He was ridiculed for going outside, and they said his eyesight actually got worse than it was previously.
Interesting, yeah. Because they almost didn't want to believe and they wanted to just stay there because it's more comfortable that way.
Yeah. Well, and they probably did fully believe that that was what was real, you know, but like yeah, it was interesting how they just couldn't really I'm not sure if they were like just couldn't really believe it or just they knew the one thing their entire lives and they had to believe one thing, but I don't know.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. Absolutely, yeah.
And I mean, it's like, yeah, like the whole thing about going back, it's hard to get away from something you're so comfortable with.
Mhm.
Um, that's all he did everything's ever known. So I think going back always seems easier. Like asking questions is always harder and is always scary. And sometimes people avoid going through all of that just to, it's like blissful ignorance. And,
Mhm.
Right.
you know,
I think another point he made was I mean, at least this is how I interpreted it, but that we should be understanding of people who are like, in his words, either um, coming out of extreme darkness into the light, or were exposed to the light, but then going back into darkness. So, kind of explaining how, like, the differences in, like, when people are coming, like, choosing what they're going to believe, you know, we should be understanding of that. I think is what he was saying in a way. Or it's kind of on that part I'm not as sure on, but I thought that was interesting too. I think it was just saying we should be understanding of people on their way to one way or another, you know, like I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, kind of like gradually help them get out because it's
Mhm.
kind of a hard process.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and you can't really blame someone, like for wanting to be comfortable and for wanting to accept what they see, because it's not for everyone. And yeah, it's like you were saying, to be able to accept both sides, getting out of the cave and not getting out of the cave, or going out and wanting to go back, because sometimes you are exposed to all those things and it's just too much, and you realize maybe what I knew or how the way I was living was just easier and more comfortable and easier to understand and to manage.
Mhm.
Right, because it's all you know, basically.
Yeah.
But it is also interesting the way that like you can never really go back to that state once you start asking yourself questions, or once you are exposed to something else, as much as you want to try. I think I don't remember if he talks about that, but I was just thinking like that's like an interesting I feel like it's an interesting way to look at it.
Mhm.
You know, I thought that was interesting too. Like once you become educated, it's pretty much impossible to go backwards and become ignorant again.
Yeah.
it's super interesting. The whole idea of going out to the cave and then returning back and having the people who were around you and kind of like accompanying you the entire time while you were in what you thought was entire reality, having that be having I don't know those people around you not necessarily trusting you or being there with it, understanding it. Anything else to add on that one?
I feel like we've covered a lot of points. That question. You guys want to do number 3?
Sure, yeah.
So, what is the rational faculty special according to Epictetus? How does it help us live well?
Well, basically, it's the thing that separates us from pretty much all other life. It's what basically gives us the ability to reason and to think, I think.
And I think he was saying that, like, well, I think he believed in like the Greek gods, you know, like Zeus and all that, and he was saying that it was a gift from the gods, the rational faculty, because um, it's the only uh, faculty that's able to contemplate other things, but also contemplate itself. So it's able to decide, like you're able to use it to decide what life is right for you, what you believe, you know. So it's extremely important. I forgot the rest of the question, but
No, you're good.
It was, yeah, what is the rational faculty, and then how does it help us then live well?
I found that it was like a good way or an easy way for me to kind of comprehend it was kind of like the difference between what grammar is in of itself and like just like those are like the rules for speaking and language. Like you do this to make a sentence to fully like enunciate these words. This is just how you do it. And then you have the rational faculty on the other hand, which makes it so then you have to kind of go deeper into that. And it's like, well then, when should I talk or when shouldn't I talk or how should I act, how shouldn't I act? And it's that ability to continue to kind of remove that further and further and further and look at it and be like, okay, so like there's a lot more for life in itself is a lot more expansive than just the immediate actions that we make in the day to day and having the ability as humans to kind of remove ourselves from the immediate place that we're in and kind of look at it as a more overarching ideal and figure out the rationality overall of every situation that we're in and how acting can kind of make ripple effects throughout the world itself and having the ability to look deeper into it in that sense is kind of what I took it as.
yeah, I
And
completely
I
agree.
think, huh?
I
Oh,
think
sorry, I was just saying I completely agree.
I
I
think
think that
that this, oh sorry, but like the distinction between the things in our life that we can control and the things that we can't, and rational faculty is something that is entirely up to us, and it's all about the way we act. And like you were saying, there is things that are completely out of our control, and once we do accept that as part of our life, it can lead us to, like the second part of the question was saying how it can help us live well. I think it's also the ability to understand what can we control and what can't we control, and once we can make that distinction, it can lead to just a more peaceful year. I feel like it's kind of freeing to be able to sometimes dissociate yourself from certain things just because they're not up to us, and then focus on how we really want to like portray ourselves, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that probably ties into developing your rational faculty too, because without that, there's no real way to decide what we can and can't control. So I kind of forgot. I think there might have been an emphasis on trying to hone that rational faculty to be able to make that distinction in the first place. But I kind of forgot. I lost my notes, but Anyways.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I think that
absolutely.
the rational
Thanks so
faculty
much.
in itself is the idea that we're able to make that distinction and that we have the ability to look at anything in that sense of having a choice.
I mean, yeah, it helps you focus on what really is important, which is just our character at the end of the day. I think without having the unnecessary suffering or unnecessary just irrational like needs, I guess, and focus.
Well, yeah, it would eliminate so much stress and worry from people's lives. It's very practical, and
Yeah.
I mean that whole well, I mean philosophy and belief system. I mean stoicism in general will probably help a lot of people who are constantly just. I mean, there's reasons to worry about things, obviously. You know, and I don't think it's saying that you shouldn't worry about things because there are things you can control that you should worry about. But I think it would take a load off of a lot of people, take a lot off people's shoulders in general if they realize that they just can't control as much as they like think they might be able to, or is all the things that they worry about. They can't control all the things that they worry about.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, basically, it's out of your control, so why worry about it? Just weather through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like it's out of my control, but um, what can I do? Like it makes you focus more on what can I do to deal with the situation, or what can I do to adapt to this? What can I? It basically makes you focus on, well, I can't control this, but what can I control? What can I do? You know, it's just interesting. But
What do you guys think about the second part? Like, how does it help you then live well? I guess, I guess it could be just like stress free, or not stress free, but allows you to concentrate on what,
less,
Less stressful, yeah,
yeah.
like less
because it
unnecessary.
basically doesn't tell you what to say. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying it's
Okay.
like it's not even like less stressful. It's just less of that unnecessary stress.
Hmm. Yeah, because it basically doesn't tell us what we should say, but kind of more what we shouldn't. I think to a degree.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that I thought was interesting was, well, like a lot of philosophers, they believe that, or a lot of them at least believe that what is correct is kind of subjective. You know, some others believe other things. You know, but I think what he believed, at least what the Stoics believed, is that there, at least at that time, what they believed is that there is a set way that the universe is and was by their belief designed. Um, and because of that, we should focus on improving like how we think about things in our rational faculty to align with what is objectively true, you know. And that's another thing you were saying, like that there is an objective truth to the universe, and we need to. That was another part of what I was saying, that we need to hone our rational faculty to um, what's it called, to more align with that, I think, and that would help us have a much more peaceful life, I think, is sort of what he was trying to say. But I'm not too sure about that, but that's just kind of what I got.
Well, yeah, I think the whole idea of instead of chasing like always trying to look for the right thing to do or trying to like feeling like you weren't I don't know, every little thing you do is super important. Being able to just kind of step back, let things happen around you, and just let yourself become aligned with that truth instead of almost chasing that truth
Mm-hmm.
makes it make more sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that innately in of itself helps us live well because then we're able to live in a more peaceful state instead of always chasing after something or continuing to feel like you're not worthy or you're not enough, and you can kind of again, take that step back, look at things in a rational sense, and realize that it's not necessarily all up to you. Like it's kind of like things just.
Mhm. Yeah, and it makes people feel better about themselves because they can realize that I'm not able to control all this, but I'm still doing the best I can, you know. I mean, like once they realize that they're doing what they can do, um then they generally will feel better about themselves, I think. But
And that everyone around you realistically is doing the best they can do.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, that gives you a different perspective on other people too. Yeah. I mean, unless they're not doing the best they can, but yeah. That's an entirely different thing. But
You can normally tell. All right. You get to go to the last one.
Okay. So where do you see overlap in the ideas and arguments of James, Plato, and Epictetus?
Actually, while you were talking, Aiden, I kind of drew a connection from James to Epictetus. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
I think it's Epictetus, but I could be wrong.
One more time.
I think it's. I mean, that's Epictetus. I think is.
Yeah, that's what I
pronunciation-
was saying when I read it.
Yeah.
It's, that sort of in letting things go and sort of allowing the path to the truth or whatever you want to call it to unfold on its own, that we can then in times when we feel like we have no other option or no other like aware choice in a sense, like when we're brought in like a point in our path where it feels like we have to make a choice, that's when like the passional nature comes in. And it's kind of interesting how those two things can kind of tie together because your life, while you're kind of like following your own rational faculty, can bring you to these points or forks in the road that force us to kind of go into James's theory, and then you can go from understanding of Epictetus, his theories, and then it kind of naturally flows into what James is talking about.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
And then the cave, you can kind of connect that to the cave in itself too, because I feel like as humans, our natural curiosity will make us want to go from whatever we perceive as the shadows or whatever we perceive as to be the full reality that eventually we'll want to expand and continue evolving or whatever you want to look at that as, and to look around and eventually go into a brighter reality or the light, as he was saying, the outside world. And along that journey is kind of where we find we can use our rational faculty and rational nature to make choices along with that.
And I just thought of something too with Plato's and forget his name, the first guy, what he said about
James
Williams. Yeah, what he said. That so when I was reading the cave thing, I was thinking like, how would you really determine whether or not you're going into the light or you're just going further into the darkness? You know, I thought that was interesting. Like, I was thinking about that, and maybe Williams is tied to that in a way where eventually you're going to have to decide whether what you're doing, like based on how you feel or not, maybe based on your passionate nature, like how, whether or not where you're going is into the light or further into the darkness, because there's so many ways that people will say, oh, you're learning the truth right now, or you're learning something very true. You know, like there's so many different viewpoints on that eventually you're going to have to kind of make that immediate decision on that, you know, what you actually believe is the truth and what you believe is the right thing that you're going into. So
yeah, I think it's kind of open to interpretation what is,
Yeah.
and isn't, you know, which I kind of thought the overlap between the three was like critical thinking. Basically, they were kind of in their own way saying to think for yourself and come to your own conclusions about your life, and basically just think about it and keep thinking about it.
that's a pretty good way to put it. Yeah.
And a philosophy in of itself.
Yeah. I think there's some philosophies that say just don't think about it, but besides those, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Some are just dive into it. Yeah. I think they're saying just like evaluate your decisions.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, yeah, because if you look at it the way Epictetus, we said, yeah, you could say that the way he looks at, like we were saying, things are out of your control. I feel like those are the things that then can be like deceptive, I guess, to your life, and they can lead to confusion and things like that, which you can then connect to the cave and all, and the way like I don't know, I was making the connection with like ignorance, you know what I mean, and focusing on the wrong things in life. That's kind of the connection I was doing in my head, where it's like Epictetus says that the things that I guess you could connect to ignorance are the things that we focus are not in our control, and then with Plato is like just accepting what we see as the reality and just not asking questions.
Yeah, sort of trusting your intuition and trusting that you're in the right direction.
Mm.
I think that I don't remember exactly if this was from Plato or from another um philosopher that we already read, but I remember one of them saying that the idea of just kind of like taking a step back and trusting that you're on the right path, and that you are going in the right direction is kind of just innately good for all of us. I don't know if it's like that. All right, cool. We wanna talk about what we found most interesting about different pieces that we read? Maybe interesting stuff to anybody else.
What was that?
Do you guys want to just, do you have anything else to add about the fourth one? Or do you want to just talk about just random things that we found interesting or surprising about the people that we read?
Well, the Zoom meeting is gonna basically like when you record it, you only have like a 40-minute window. So it's gonna end in 3 minutes. So if you guys wanna talk about anything else.
Well, we definitely passed I think it was 30-minute mark. So,
Yeah.
is there anything else we need to talk about? I mean,
They're really like the optional questions.
oh,
I mean,
Uh,
I guess the last one that was like optional, it's like if there's anything else that you want to discuss. Like what other aspects of the text you would like to discuss and why.
hmm. Uh,
I think that these ones are kind of used though for like time boosters in case you like didn't have much to talk about the first four. So
Yeah.
assuming they're everything is probably good. Once you guys do have.
Okay. Here, I'll stop.